And now it's Boomer Life. Lifestyle ideas designed to make your life more engaging, meaningful, and complete. Celebrating the baby boomer generation, this is Boomer Life with Sterling Fox.
Well, hello and welcome to Boomer Life here on AM 650. On the program today, we're talking about hearing and all the latest innovations in hearing, and we're going to talk about those of us who, well, are dealing with varying degrees of hearing loss. It's a pleasure to welcome back from Next Gen Hearing and Mainland Hearing, Dr. Ted Venema. It is with us in studio. Good to see you again.
Yeah, likewise.
Dr. Ted is a registered audiologist who has worked for the largest hearing aid manufacturer in Canada.
Yep.
You've been a professor of audiology. You've had quite a colorful career. And now you're based on Vancouver Island and traveling all over Canada at teaching people about hearing. And you were just recently as part of the, National Association of Occupational Safety and Health, NAOSH Week was a couple of weeks ago. And you were over in Vancouver doing a presentation for the gas company at Fortis, BC.
That's right, yeah.
So, would they be the executives that you talked to, or were you talking to the actual guys who go out and do the hard work?
One person of the 60 was an executive. The other 59 were our Billy workers.
Oh, okay. Now, when they have an opportunity, I suppose they're all pleased to have a couple of hours off work to attend a compulsory seminar. But I'll bet you a lot of them, especially guys who are involved in noisy workplaces, would probably be really relieved and curious about a presentation from an audiologist.
They were. In fact, they said it's the first time anybody had ever presented during NAOSH week or whatever on hearing and hearing loss, which surprised me because hearing, noise is an occupational hazard.
Absolutely.
Especially the sudden impact noises of clanking, and they've got all these valves and everything they're doing with Fortis gas.
Right, sure.
So their kind of noise is usually sudden impact noise, but a lot of industries have constant, monotonous, high-level noise, and all of it causes hearing loss if unprotected.
So when you do the Q&A, and particularly after the deal, when you just get to schmooze with the guys, and they come up to you and go, and they thank you for your presentation, and then they want to know a little something more.
Yeah.
What do they ask you about?
Oh, they often ask about individual things. Well, my brother has this, or I've got this in this ear. We actually had a lot of questions.
Okay.
The talk got done. I did my usual spiel with a PowerPoint presentation.
Right.
And then, of course, time for questions, and nobody dares to put up their hand until the first
Nobody wants to be first.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden they start coming.
Right.
Then tons of questions about ringing in the ear that's caused by noise, tinnitus, because noise causes hearing loss, which in turn causes that ringing in the ear. And people having various experiences with this, that, and the other thing. So they would sometimes ask personal things. Some of them would come up to me at the end and ask me about their cousin's, niece's, husband's, first wife's child.
Of course, right.
Somebody who, that they know in their family. But they really enjoyed the talk.
I bet they did.
Yeah, they found it really interesting. And I found it fascinating that it hadn't been done before.
Ted, how long in Canada have we have our compensation boards? Now it's called WorkSafe BC. They call them workers' comp in other provinces. How recently have these industrial safety organizations begun to pay serious attention to hearing issues?
I'd say over the past 20 years.
Okay.
I think we've become better at it over the last generation. I mean, our parents' generation, that was the age of unprotected hearing.
Okay.
I mean, these people, lumber mills, factories, and nobody gave a ding-dong about hearing. I mean, you can't see hearing, whatever, I mean, we don't stare at the sun because everybody knows it's going to burn out your eyes.
Right.
But for some reason, people think you can just expose the ear to just tons of noise. And our ears were meant to hear soft voices over the crackling of a fire. We were not meant to hear steel on steel. I mean, that's the Industrial Revolution.
Well, but you're talking about the human body design.
Yeah.
And as we've evolved from those people who like to hang around campfires because they didn't have any other means, we've evolved, but our bodies haven't necessarily changed a great deal.
Not in the past 100 years.
But I'm talking specifically about hearing matters, right?
Yeah.
And everything around us has become a whole lot louder.
That's right. And if you look at elderly people in Africa and you compare them to elderly people in Canada, the elderly Africans have better hearing than the elderly Canadians. And the reason why is because they have less industrial noise pollution.
Okay.
Noise is the second greatest cause of hearing loss. The main cause is age. Presbycusis, and you can't do anything about that. That's just the way it is. And, presbycusis, Presbyterian, Church of the Elders,
right.
Presbycusis, hearing of the elders.
Okay.
Presbyopia, your arms aren't long enough to see the page.
Ah.
Presbyopia hits you at age 40. Presbycusis hits you at age 65. But noise-induced hearing loss, this is the second greatest cause of permanent, non-treatable hearing loss that you can't fix except wear hearing aids. And the sad thing about, or the good thing about it, is it's so preventable.
Okay.
It's 100% preventable.
And a lot of it is now taking place in workplace environments where people, I mean, even if you go to the muffler shop these days, you see guys wearing those little hearing aids, and sometimes they have the kind with the connector.
That's right.
But everybody seems to be far more conscious of noise pollution. That's what it's become called, right?
And employers by law have to provide. I mean, they measure the sound that causes noise-induced hearing loss is going to be about 85 decibels. And if you're exposed to 85 decibels for 8 hours a day, the law says the employer has to provide hearing protection.
Okay.
And if you up that by 5 dB, your time exposure gets cut in half. So 90 is now 4 hours a day. 95 decibels, 2 hours a day. 100 decibels, 1 hour a day.
Oh, so that would be the
interaction.
Oh, so if you're in a workplace environment in which 100 decibels of noise is the standard, legally you're only allowed to be exposed to that for an hour a day.
That's right.
Isn't that interesting?
So noise-induced hearing loss hangs on two things. One, the intensity of the noise, and two, the length of exposure to that noise.
Okay.
So the two interact together. So the more, like if you're on a lawnmower, a gas-powered lawnmower, that's about 90 decibels. You can be exposed.
One of those little ride-em jobs?
Yep.
Okay.
So you can be exposed to that for a few hours without causing permanent hearing loss. But if you're exposed to a screaming jet engine, well, you've got only a few minutes before it's permanent. So there's a real interaction there. Regardless, the bottom line is, I think, in some places 85, some places 90 for 8 hours a day.
Interesting. And I'm just thinking of the airport, and you go to have a drink at the airport, and you look out at the tarmac, and everybody driving around on those little trucks everybody's got headgear on.
Well, you know how loud jet engines are.
Of course,
I used to have a friend in Toronto. He worked at Amsterdam Schiphol Airport.
Okay.
In Amsterdam.
I've been there many times.
He was the guy that wouldn't want to wear hearing protection because it was just a hassle.
Okay.
His job was to pull away the wooden blocks from the wheels of the plane.
All right.
So he'd be running out there and alternately bobbing his head on one shoulder to another shoulder, covering his ears, pulling those blocks away, quick.
But he wouldn't wear
better that than wearing the ear protection.
Oh, really?
Like, oh, come on.
So was it a sign of a kind of a non-macho thing to not be able? Come on, be a man, take it. The rest of us are.
And also just a hassle. Some people looked at it as a hassle.
Wow.
But I mean, your hearing, once it's gone due to noise, it's gone.
Right.
Like you can't fix these things. These are not. And again, I say, like we said earlier, you don't stare at the sun. Everybody seems to know.
We all get that.
You all know it. Like during an eclipse, put a hole in the box.
Yeah,
light,
right.
Only look at the blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But when it comes to hearing, well, you can't see hearing loss. We believe what we see.
Right.
So we just sort of sweep it under the rug because you can't see it. It's invisible.
Now, what happens, though, when one suffers in a workplace environment from prolonged exposure to loud noise and there is diminished hearing capability? Is that a compensatable condition in some provinces?
Oh, yeah. WorkSafe BC as well.
Oh, okay.
I mean, when you get a hearing test, the hearing test shows an obvious earmark, so to say, like in quotes.
Okay.
The pun. But I mean, it's because the noise-induced hearing loss has a particular shape on an audiogram or hearing test. So any practitioner can just look at it and eyeball, it's noise-induced.
Oh, really?
Yep, that as opposed to age, that's noise-induced hearing loss.
Okay, now I have had a hearing test. You have seen my test results.
Yep.
The test was taken by Dr. Herman Lee over there at the Mainland Hearing Metrotown store on
Now,
Kingsway.
yours just showed an attitude problem.
I'm not surprised by that. But now, and the reason I'm asking is because I've been wearing headsets, the likes of which you and I are wearing right now, and for over 40 years. But I've always been extremely careful about the volume of my headsets. Unlike some of my colleagues who just turn it up to bleed, man. I've never been able to do that.
No,
so when you looked at my test results, Did you see that
No,
drop off?
I didn't see that. No. Your hearing did not show any signs of noise-induced hearing loss that way.
So I've just got the age stuff there.
You can hear, you just don't listen.
Now we're back to my bad attitude. Jeez, and I was just about to talk boomer life here and how those of us who are of the boomer persuasion are dealing with the reality to some extent or another, all of us, of hearing loss, correct?
Yeah.
But most of us, it happens. It's unavoidable. So is it typical or is it to be expected, Ted, that in one's lifetime there will be such a profound loss of hearing that a hearing aid will be likely for most of us?
I'd say elderly age hearing loss, presbycusis, is inevitable.
Okay.
30% of people over 65 have aidable hearing loss. Hearing loss is sufficient to benefit from the use of wearing hearing aids.
Okay.
Now, I'm not talking great big plastic honkers behind the ears. You wouldn't even see these things. I mean, the days of those big pink or beige hearing aids are gone.
Right,
okay?
right.
Hearing aids now are digital, they're programmed, and you can get weak ones. And that's what most people... Now, 50% of people over 75 have aidable hearing loss. That's sufficient. So, I mean, it's real. It's out there. It's inevitable. Most of us will end up having hearing loss in our old age years, 80 years old, sufficient enough to benefit from the use of a little bit of a lift, much like people wear reading glasses. Just that little bit of a lift to help you hear the treble, because elderly people hearing loss is treble hearing loss, and so, by the way, is noise-induced hearing loss.
Okay.
Both of them.
A question about glasses, though, because I'm wearing glasses today, which I need for reading and computers especially. But we don't think anything at all about going out and getting an eye test and getting a prescription and paying whatever for the grinding and the nice frames and all of that. But back to the hearing thing, because we don't see hearing.
And hearing loss is associated with infirmity and age.
That's right. So are we, those of us who have no compunction whatsoever about heading up to the optometrist and getting a new set of glasses, how many of us are going to have some difficulty being persuaded to get a hearing test?
A lot. Many people.
Isn't that strange?
It's no one's fault. It's a stigma. And hearing aids are associated with age, with infirmity, with, I'm getting on. And yet, I think the direction, if we think about ear gear, we think about people walking around with things in their ears now all the time.
Sure.
Bluetooth, connections with their cell phones.
Absolutely.
Well, hearing aids are kind of, that's helping hearing aids.
Oh, okay.
Because hearing aids also, by the way, use Bluetooth.
Oh, is that right?
They stream with your telephone, and they stream with your iPad, iPods. So they do. So hearing aids have come a long way, baby.
Oh, so there's a whole new era of connectivity.
Totally.
Interesting.
Yep.
Okay.
Hearing aids talk to each other. Hearing aids, now one company has a hearing aids totally connecting with the computer. Like with all this stuff, you don't even have to make them do it. They automatically will stream with music coming from your iPad, iPod, whatever. So it's really amazing what's happening out there.
Okay, so now you said the most common nature or form of hearing loss is simply related to age.
Yep. The second most is noise.
Is noise-induced.
Yep.
Now, you also talked about tinnitus, the ringing in the ear, and you and I did a show about this some time ago. So is tinnitus, that ringing in the ear, is that normal?
After noise exposure, it is. It's not normal. Tinnitus is not always dangerous. It's a nuisance.
Yeah,
people
it can
become
be, really.
aware of it. It's actually not that loud, but the person himself or herself hears it. No one else hears it. And the more you hear it and the more you're bugged about it, the more you layer it like an oyster does a pearl, And
the more embellished it becomes to you, right?
It's like hearing someone snore from across the hallway. How bad are you going to let it bug you? Or the dripping of a faucet.
Right.
So tinnitus is highly associated with noise-induced hearing loss.
Oh, it is.
It is. So when you've been listening to a concert and you got a lot of noise, and your ears are ringing.
Oh boy.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
And then you crash. You go to bed. The next morning, the ringing is gone, and that's because your hair cells in your inner ear have been able to stand back up again. Okay. But if you keep walking over the blades of grass, eventually you're going to wear down a path. So then the hearing loss is permanent. But the ringing in the ear after noise exposure, you can look at it like nature's warning. That's like a bellwether, like, hey, buddy, watch it.
So
don't do this all the time, because pretty soon you're going to have the hearing loss and the ringing isn't going to go away.
So the tinnitus, the ringing in the ear, is actually a huge clue.
It's a clue that you've had noise exposure. Now, not everybody with ringing in the ear has had noise exposure.
Okay.
But a lot of people with noise-induced hearing loss complain about tinnitus.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a highly, if I had to pick a hearing loss that's most associated with tinnitus, it's noise-induced hearing loss.
Well, we'll talk lots more about noise-induced hearing loss. Our guest on this episode of Boomer Life from Next Gen Hearing and Mainland Hearing, registered audiologist Dr. Ted Venema. Always a pleasure to have him with us on Boomer Life. And we're back with lots more right after this.
Canada's only weekly radio show dedicated to the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on AM 650.